Jesus didn't say if you fast, but when you fast. So how should you fast as a Jesus follower? Well, Jesus said fast like it's no big deal. Good morning and welcome to 755 Live. For about 5 minutes, you'll hear all about easy to remember soundbite versions of what Jesus said. And the point is to help you experience life to the fullest, the Jesus way. Today's Jesus Said comes from Matthew 6, verses 16 through 18, and we're going to be reading from the New Living Translation today. And when you fast, don't make it obvious, as the hypocrites do, for they like to look miserable and disheveled so people will admire them for their fasting. I tell you the truth, that is the only reward they will ever get. But when you fast, comb your hair and wash your face. Then no one will notice that you are fasting except your Father, who knows what you do in private. And your Father, who sees everything, will reward you. Now, the main point that we're making today is fasting is not about if you fast, but when you fast. And right now, our church is on day number 10 of 22 days of fasting and prayer. If you'd like some more information about that, you can go to our website at Today.Church. There are some prayer guides each day based on the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Some interesting stuff there. But Jesus in Matthew 6 here is giving us examples of how to pray and then how to fast. And once again, not if you fast, but when. And the soundbite version, fast like it's no big deal, it really means that fasting is not about anybody else. It's not what someone else might think. It's not something that we do for righteousness or to be seen by others. It's not about anybody else, no matter what they might think either way. In fact, the disciples were criticized for not fasting. In Matthew 9, 14, and 15, one day the disciples of John the Baptist came to Jesus and asked him, "Why don't your disciples fast like we do and the Pharisees do?" And Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests mourn while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast." So it's not about us evaluating others. It's not about others evaluating us, and it's certainly not about us putting on a show. And we need to understand that in this time period, fasting was very common. It was a standard part of culture. The Jews fasted at least 2 days a week. Fasting was a part of God's calendar in what I like to call the Older Testament. Well, what happened? Well, for the first few hundred years, the church also had fasting as a regular part of life. It was assumed that fasting was normal. One of the earliest documents that we have outside of the Bible, the Didache, written somewhere between the 1st and 2nd century, just assumed that fasting was normal 2 days a week, and it talked about when that should happen. And unfortunately, today we can pretty much assume that we don't fast regularly. But Jesus said, when you fast. You see, fasting is about obedience. It is about learning how to control our own desires. And if we think that we don't need to fast, just consider this. Jesus fasted 40 days before beginning his ministry. The Son of God fasted and prayed. Paul fasted for a few days right after his conversion. We see fasting all throughout Acts. They didn't make decisions without fasting and praying. And the question is, when do we fast? When is it on the calendar? Because Jesus didn't say if, but when. And it's not for show. It's not to earn or deserve anything. It's not to achieve righteousness, but it's just in obedience. And if you don't have fasting as a part of your regular spiritual routine, I just want to encourage you to start small. The webpage that I mentioned, it has a fasting guide there with some tips on how to start fasting, the different kinds of fasts. Because it's very, very important for us as Jesus followers to actually follow Jesus. And he didn't say, if you fast. He said when. And he said, when you fast like it's no big deal. Not for show, not so anybody can see what you're doing, but just in obedience. So how can you put that into action today? Fast, like it's no big deal. That's what Jesus said. Thank you so much for listening. If this is meaningful to you, it really does mean a lot to me if you like it, if you share it, if you comment. I really appreciate you. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I hope this time together has helped you live life to the fullest, the Jesus way. And remember, follow Jesus today. Love first.